A pleasant evening and welcome to Thursday's edition of Primetime News with me, Michael Madimba. Leading the bulletin tonight, Zedekiah Z. Ngabire, the Namibian government's top negotiator on a proposed deal concerning Germany's atonement for colonial-era genocide, died in Windhoek this morning aged 88.
The presidential office confirmed the death of Ngabire today after he had been taken into hospital just a few days prior. It comes a week after the prominent figure opposed to the terms of the agreement with Germany. In the deal, which was announced in May after 6 years of talks, the German government recognizes the atrocities committed against the Herero and Nama ethnic groups in a genocide more than 100 years ago after the crimes committed by the German colonial power in what is now known as Namibia. Germany wants to officially ask the descendants for forgiveness and support them with a total of 1.1 billion euros over several decades. The negotiations were conducted by representatives of the two governments, with the Herero and Nama closely involved. However, since the deal was announced, there has been harsh criticism of its terms from some representatives of the ethnic groups, derailing its implementation. Historians estimate that 65,000 out of 80,000 Hereros and at least 10,000 out of 20,000 Namas were killed.
Speaker of the National Assembly Peter Kajavivi on behalf of Parliament paid tribute to the late Ngarikituke Ernest Chiriange on Thursday. Kajavivi in a media statement said, Chiriange was a long-standing comrade and friend with whom he worked closely over many years during the liberation struggle and since independence. Chiriange died in Windhoek on Wednesday after a short illness. He was aged 77. With COVID-19 cases continuously increasing, government is reviewing its COVID-19 vaccination strategic campaign to enhance awareness and increase the country's required 60% herd immunity.
In an interview with the Namibia Press Agency on Tuesday, Minister of Health and Social Services, Dr. Kalumbi Shangula, said although government vaccination campaigns were rolled out in March, when the first jabs were administered, the existing method is not effective enough to drive people to believe in the efficiency of the vaccines. Namibia has been administering the Oxford AstraZeneca and China-produced Sinopharm vaccines since March. By Tuesday, 107,611 first doses and 20,999 second doses had been administered countrywide. Shangula said government saw the need to review the campaign strategy to involve Namibians from all sectors of influence to enhance health awareness and counter anti-vaccination information. Shangula noted that government has realized that misinformation about the vaccine has gained ground in the community and there is a need for a vigorous vaccination campaign for Namibia to meet the required 60% herd immunity to lower the country's infection rate as well as reduce the number of hospitalized persons. Meanwhile, regions such as Khomas, Erongo, and Ottozonjupa are leading in vaccination, while regions with the fewest administered vaccines are Zambezi, Kavango West, and Oshikoto.
Popular Democratic Movement PDM lawmaker and farmer Kathiongere Cheundo says the removal of the veterinary cordon fence, popularly known as the Red Line, is enigmatic in nature as those currently suffering from its brand will not immediately reap positive results from its hasty removal as far as accessing lucrative beef markets is concerned.
This is according to Popular Democratic Movement lawmaker and farmer Kathiongere Cheundo in a recent engagement with his agency. Cheundo is a farmer in the Kunene region with his communal farming based at Orundu-Odombara, some 70 kilometers from Verda, where the Red Line begins. He is one of the farmers negatively impacted by the veterinary cordon fence's continued presence. Apart from small stock, Cheundo breeds traditional Nguni, Afrikaner and Brahman cattle. He explained, saying, the purpose is to add value, and when we remove the Red Line in one go, the whole market will collapse and it is not what we want to see. We are farmers and we want value for our livestock. Cheundo's comments come at the back of a High Court case by affirmative repositioning leader Job Amupanda, who wants the veterinary cordon fence declared unlawful and unconstitutional. At the moment, a group under the Kaukola and Concerned Group Burner has thrown its weight behind Amupanda to see to it that the Red Line is gone.
The private sector, led by the Namibian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, on Thursday handed over the first consignment of 21-ton tanks of oxygen to the Ministry of Health and Social Services.
The first consignment was financed by NAMDEP at the cost of 400,000 Namibian dollars through an initiative by the private sector aimed at tackling the current shortage of medical oxygen in efforts to restore supply of critical oxygen for the treatment of COVID-19 patients in state health facilities. Speaking at the handover ceremony, NCCI President BC Wirap said the private sector has committed itself to continue the same supply of 21-ton tanks of oxygen every week up to the end of September 2021. Wirap further said the current medical oxygen shortage in the country is between 150 and 180 tons per month, which is over and above the capacity being provided by the current supplier. He added, saying they have cooperated with other key players to work out a strategy on how they can ensure that the shortage of oxygen is eliminated and that oxygen is delivered and distributed to the hospitals and health facilities where it is needed the most in the fastest turnaround time. Concluding, Wirap called on other businesses to join their initiative to amount a coordinated assistance to the government. Accepting the donation, Minister of Health and Social Services Dr. Kalumbi Shangula lauded NCCI and its partners for their aid to government, saying the donation will go a long way to supplement the oxygen available to the country's health facilities. He said in recent weeks, high demand for oxygen has been reported across the country in both the private and the public sectors, adding that with the pressure now relieved from the existing hospital oxygen generating system, it is now able to provide the required purity of above 93% to the Katutura State Hospital. For Nampa News, LV Haihambo.
Stand by for your top roundup. In our business and economics news, we begin locally. While more needs to be done to alleviate poverty in Namibia, Speaker of the National Assembly Peter Katjavivi has said the country is slowly but surely winning the fight against poverty and underdevelopment.
According to a media statement issued on Wednesday, Katjavivi, while addressing an online seminar organized and hosted by the National People's Congress of China and attended by parliamentarians from Liberia, South Africa and Zimbabwe, said Namibia has made great strides in the war against poverty. He highlighted that between 2001 and 2011, Namibia recorded a 41% reduction in absolute poverty, while severe poverty was reduced from 23% to 15.8% during the same period. Katjavivi remarks on poverty came a few days after Namibia National Planning Commissioner Obed Kanjode launched a report on Namibia's multi-dimensional poverty index, which he highlighted that 43.3% of the total population in Namibia lives in multitude poverty. The report pointed to food security and child malnutrition as major contributors to the country's poverty situation. Kanjode had said the advent of COVID-19 has worsened the poverty situation among poor and disadvantaged populations in the country. Katjavivi emphasized the need for lawmakers to use their mandate of empowering people as they have the power to use their legislative oversight to improve people's livelihoods. Josephine Simeon, Nampi News.
The Goethe Institute of Namibia, supported by the Museums Association of Namibia, recently held a 5-day workshop for officials from across Namibia to share knowledge on marketing a museum using social media.
The first of the two-part training under the museum's outreach program also focused on the general management of a museum. The museum's outreach program stems from past cooperation between the Goethe Institute and the University of Namibia on the paradigm shift in museology across post-colonial Africa, with emphasis on the importance of community engagement in the operations of a museum as an institute of heritage management and conservation. Museums Association of Namibia's Museums Development Officer, Tuda Haitula, in a media statement on Wednesday said they designed the workshop to be interactive and responsive to the needs of the museums. The statement further said Goethe Institute Namibia Director Dennis Schroeder noted that participants in the museum's outreach program have the opportunity to document traditional forms of conservation and thus value the indigenous knowledge systems that exist in Namibia, adding that cultural heritages provide individuals and societies with a sense of belonging.
We'll be back shortly after the business and economics roundup. That's all the top news we had for you this evening. Kindly stand by for your sports update with Selima Shimofeleni. Over to you, Selima.
Thank you, Michael. Good evening and welcome to Sport Planet. The Namibia Premier League can appeal the decision by the Court of Arbitration for Sports to discard its appeal against its expulsion from the Namibia Football Association.
Lawyer and football commentator Stephen Dorokade said sole arbitrator Luigi Fumagalli, who handed down the verdict in the case on Monday, did not deal with the merits of the case but rather focused on technicalities. He added that the case took a long time to be finalized, which he felt was longer than necessary. Dorokade added that even though the NPL had success with their appeal, Fumagalli did not find the NPL as an interested party with direct and personal interest because of their expulsion, and hence there was no major success for NPL. The major findings were that the Court of Arbitration for Sports has jurisdiction to preside over the challenge, as NFA felt otherwise. He also dealt with the NPL suspension by NFA, where he found that the suspension had lapsed with the holding of the NFA Congress in November 2019, when it should have been tabled for confirmation or lifting, he explained. Dorokade further said the arbitrator assessed the NPL case as an expelled member which had not challenged the expulsion, meaning they had no personal and direct interest in the case. On Monday, the NPL said it noted the decision issued by the Court of Arbitration for Sports. NFA President Renga Haikali said they are not surprised by the outcome of the case at Court of Arbitration for Sports. Josephine Simeon, Nampa News.
An international team of scientists from Manchester, Montpellier, and Copenhagen have identified why some endurance athletes experience a heart rhythm disturbance called heart block that can lead to an increased risk of pacemaker implantation in later life.
A study announced today, led by the University of Manchester, carried out a series of tests to find out what triggers molecular changes in the hearts of some athletes. The scientific team is the first to research the physiology of the notoriously hard-to-study atrioventricular node in athletes. They found that long-term exercise in retired racehorses, the best available model of the athlete's heart, and in mice, triggered the changes in a part of the heart known as the AV node. The lead author, Dr. Alicia De Souza from the University of Manchester, said, "For the first time, our research highlights fundamental adaptations taking place. Because we found similar effects on both mice and racehorses, it's fair to assume this mechanism is present in humans too." The work is the latest in a series of studies conducted by the team, showing that endurance exercise directly impacts the electrical wiring system of the heart.
Your sports roundup is up next. And with that, we've come to the end of tonight's bulletin. We thank you for tuning in. As always, give us a thumbs up and share. If you're new to this channel, please don't forget to subscribe, as well as click on the notifications bell to stay up to date with the latest happenings locally and globally. Do make a date with us tomorrow for your primetime news. From myself, Salima Shumwe-Feleni, and the entire crew behind the scenes, it's good night.